Good day, Bashar. It's good to communicate with you in this fashion again. Thank you. I have a couple of questions about Anima and her
Yes.
role in the first contact program.
Yes.
And what would be her responsibilities?
As a social engineer, she would come along later, along with many of her co-workers or colleagues, if you wish to call them that, because once contact opens up more broadly on your planet, then there is the whole issue of how do you acclimate to that? And therefore the social engineers come in to explain the easiest ways for your society to begin to adapt to the idea of recognizing that you're not alone in the universe.
Would that be coming in telepathically or actually in a physical form?
Both.
Is she interacting with us now?
She's always paying attention to any first contact experience so that she can understand to what degree her social engineering skills need to play a part in the eventual open contact that may occur.
And how about Epsilon, Epiphany, and Eclipse? Are they part of the first contact program as well?
Well, you do understand that they are artificially intelligent structures, yes?
Yes.
They're not people.
I know personally they're not people, but they interact with our reality through our
They do.
through our moon. Is that correct?
Yes, we have guided the energy to be reflected off your moon to allow you to experience the stabilization effect that they offer. So yes, of course, in that sense, they play a part. Yes, of course, they're involved. But the idea is that they're not involved in the same way that individual physical people are. They're providing more of a background vibration of stability, of balance.
Yes, I sense that when I look at the moon in our reality here.
Yes, yes.
It's very, there's been a sweeping change in what I consider my own reality, which I feel is a third reality of what I've been working with over the years.
Yes.
And it was very, very gentle and moved very swiftly into another reality because of the synchronicities that I had recognized were not
Yes.
there before.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, that's the way it happens for most people.
Yeah, it was very nice, very open, and still is just a gentle stream of consciousness, just supporting.
All right. Congratulations.
Thank you. And this is also the third reality that we've been discussing over the years, correct?
Well, in a sense, although leaving it as just number 3 may be a little bit misleading because, again, remember, you're shifting realities billions of times a second, but you're creating a third continuity to impose upon the changes that make it seem like a consistent new timeline.
I see.
Do you understand?
I do. I do.
Right.
I'm just, it's a very vast subject, so I did get a piece of that. Thank you.
All right. All right.
How far above Bell Rock are you right now?
About 3,000 miles.
Okay, that's consistent. It's been consistent from the last time we heard it. I think it was 3,000 miles.
Yes.
So what does that consistency mean to us or to you?
Well, the consistency means, again, that there is stability being created and continuity being created in the new direction that most of you are taking that are relating to beings like myself.
Now, I see that I feel our world is getting more conscious, and
the one you're in, yes.
The one I'm in.
Yes, because other versions of Earth are not. So you can only experience the version you're in. And if the version you're in appears to you to reflect the idea of an increase in consciousness, then that's representative of that version of Earth.
Going back to the chart that I'd seen earlier, I understand what you're saying. It's not a linear fashion. It's multidimensional.
Well, yes, you may create linearity in your particular version of the shifts that you're doing billions of times a second because you're still experiencing the concept of perspective from space-time. But nevertheless, there are others that are shifting in different directions as well. And eventually, even though you can still see them, you eventually won't.
I'm feeling that already in the background. That it's like a dreamy thing. It's like, oh, did that
Yeah.
happen, or was that real? And I know it was. If I don't focus on it, it's really very, very light in the background.
Yes, it doesn't mean it's not real. It just may mean it's not real for you in your reality, but you may still be minimally aware of it.
Yes, and I've been doing a lot of internal reviewing of where I've been and where I am now to see, my own progress and so forth. And I remember the first 30 years of my life that I just had a real great time, and I didn't pay attention to anything like other than my own focus. And it seems like that's where we're back here again.
In a
Like I went out.
sense, but differently, because now you can be aware of more things and yet not divert yourself from the path that you're on.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm much more well informed as how I'm focusing my energy right now.
Yes,
Yeah, it's very exciting.
it is.
Yeah, very exciting and very lovely. It's a very
Yes.
lovely energy transition.
Yes.
And I'm grateful for the information that I've received along the way, especially through through your teaching. So thanks again, and
It is our passion and our pleasure. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Good day.
Good day.
Greetings, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
It is an honor to be connecting with you.
And our honor to be connecting with all of you as well.
I want to share a dream that I had recently,
All
and a bit of a quick short story of synchronicity. I was just 2 nights ago, I woke up from a dream, and in the dream, I was exploring some series of underground caves and caverns, and we were searching for a crystal skull.
Yes.
Found the skull in a box, a friend of mine in the dream, and the box seemed too small for the skull to fit in. And he opened the box once we retrieved it and we're above ground. And the skull came out, and I started having this deep emotional expression and love and joy, and I'm crying in the dream, and I just feel this connection with this skull. And I get down to the level of the skull to sync my eyes and skull with the skull and mirror it.
Yes.
I start to experience almost like my skull is a singing bowl being sung in a really intense vibrational connection.
Yes.
And I could see my eyes reflected in the eye sockets of the skull, and they were flashing red with the frequency of the moom, moom. And every time that frequency came around, the red flash in my eyes would flash until it became unified, and I kind of fell back with tons of energy going through my body, and I woke up. And I wanted to share that with you because when I shared it with a friend, I said, this would be really great to talk to Bashar about. And then I got an email. An email said, hey, you want to talk to Bashar tomorrow? We have an opening for you. So it all felt very synchronistic.
Well, it is. Everything is synchronicity. It's just a matter of whether you are aware of it or not.
Right, right. So I was wondering, was that dream a connection, like a parallel life connection, or was that more of a grooming me to get used to certain frequencies?
The second one.
That's what I thought. Was the skull in my dream a representation of Pele?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Because it feels like I feel very excited to connect with that skull and possibly interact or be some sort of keeper or protector of that skull.
It is a very deep, which was symbolized by the idea of the underground tunnels, deep earth vibration to the soul, in a sense, of the earth itself.
Right.
To the core of the earth itself, and therefore to your core.
And so why did the skull choose to have this interaction with me specifically?
Because you chose to have the interaction with it.
To experience an aspect of my core?
Yes, to allow yourself to begin to blend more of that deeper core energy and allow it to filter up into your more conscious, aware mind.
So as to...
In other words, to go from the core and explode into the surface like a volcano, Pele, yes?
Right. So it was more for my own transformation than anything grooming me, maybe specifically for interactions with that skull physically.
Well, that is not necessarily an impossibility, but nevertheless, you're the one doing this.
Right.
So you're using those symbols and those connections, those frequencies, in order to allow yourself to groom yourself for more
Right.
interaction on different levels, both of the earth and interdimensionally.
I see. I see.
Bringing things from the core to the surface,
Got it.
creating new land, in a sense. Do you understand?
Oh, interesting. Well, that's very synchronistic because we are actually looking at creating some, well, not land per se, but communities on land. So that was,
Same thing,
yeah, yeah.
because you're changing the vibration and therefore creating a new reality, a new space.
Right, right.
But it's coming from the deep core self. You have to have that deep anchor to ground you in order to participate in something that represents higher frequencies.
I see. I see. Yeah. Because to me, it feels like even when I think about it, I get this immense grounded strength of
Exactly.
certainty that feels impenetrable.
That is your indestructible core. All of you have it.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. The I believe I saw a hybrid child in physical form. I was around the Bell Rock vortex and I was sharing about hybrid children. And I was walking back off trail and came around a bend and saw a hybrid child female standing in front of me. And as soon as I saw her, she blipped out of reality and she was gone. And I was wondering if this is a type of stage of contact that hybrids are playing with us in a sense to see if we can recognize them.
Yes.
All right, awesome. And can you confirm if that was Raven?
She's saying that's not all I am.
Interesting. Can she elaborate on what that means?
No.
Or is that mine? Okay. Thank you. There's a term in the raw material of the Law of One, and the term is harvest. And I believe when you shared an experience, okay, last question here. When you shared the experience of your collective going into a meditation for 3 days and emerging essentially in fourth density experience,
Yes.
with no sleep and food, this sort of thing.
That is the Shakana experience.
The Shakana experience, exactly. And so would you say that our becoming the sixth hybrid race, as Ra was talking, it said every 26,000 years, there's like this cosmic clock, the precession of the equinox, where we have the opportunity to shift densities as a collective and have our own experience of a harvest in a sense.
Yes, you are shifting. Now, of course, this won't necessarily be the choice that everyone makes, because again, you're splitting into different versions of Earth, so to speak.
Right, right. And so in a sense, becoming the sixth hybrid race is can't really say a shortcut, but kind of like a shortcut to the harvest, because we're blending with individuals and beings that are further gradations of density, and in a sense, allowing ourselves to get to the full transition of fourth density a lot quicker.
Yes, if you match the frequencies that those kinds of beings, such as ourselves, are sharing with you, of course it will accelerate things, because you are not getting in your own way by holding on to beliefs that don't work for the fourth density reality.
I see. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So remember, the idea of a harvest is also the idea of letting go of the chaff and just keeping the kernels.
Got it. Chaff being the negative limiting beliefs.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. Okay. Last quick question, and I'll pass it.
Oh, the last question.
Last. You've heard that so many times.
Yes.
There was a prophecy given in the 90s about Austin, Texas, becoming one of the first, quote, golden cities that will create kind of a new model for community and interaction. Do you have anything you could share on this idea?
At this time, no.
Okay. Thank you, Bishop.
Except, again, to remind you, there's no such thing as a prediction of the future.
Absolutely.
There is an sensing of the energy that exists at the moment the prediction is made. Once the prediction is known, you get to decide what direction to take that in.
I see. Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bashar.
You are welcome.
Hello, Bashar and Bashar team. This is Linda from Copenhagen, Denmark. I would like to ask about the Earthborn preparers. You gave them the name preparers in your previous transmission. The ones who have been hybridized in the womb and then born onto the planet, and who work with, sensitizing humans to like the hybrid vibration and so forth. So can you elaborate more on them? Like, how many are there? How do they work? How do people react when they encounter these preparers? How many are there in the different countries? Are they in every country? What is the age range? Are there any specific abilities? Are they more psychic? In another transmission, you agreed to call them the indigos. There was a lady who asked if it were the indigos, and you said that term could be sufficient to describe them. So if you can please just, go more into that, that would be lovely. Thank you. Love you. Bye.
Generally speaking, right now, there are hundreds of thousands of preparers, perhaps even millions by now, as we read your collective energy. The idea, again, is that they give off a certain frequency and they gravitate towards certain ideas and subjects that have to do with a more expansive view of the universe, a deeper connection to spirit, a clearer recognition of who and what they are, and not getting caught up so much in outdated ideas that no longer work. So the idea, again, is to recognize this has been happening now for a few decades, and that it will continue to grow and express itself in the versions of Earth that have chosen collectively to head in the direction, to navigate in the direction of open contact, until such time as the majority of the population of that version of Earth are hybridized to that frequency. And that is the version, or several versions, because there are several versions of any particular possibility or probability, that will then be the versions that experience the concept of open contact in the way that we have been discussing it. Other versions may experience different ideas of open contact. Other versions may not experience it at all. But the ones that are hybridized as preparers in that sense will form generally, in most versions, the majority of the population, generally speaking, by about your year of 2050.
Hello, Tadeo.
Nania.
I have some questions from our viewers.
All right. Please proceed.
All right. The first question is, do we share reincarnations with the same set of souls in our family or people or spirits? And do we choose who to reincarnate with each time, or is it random?
Well, as we have discussed many times, reincarnation, while it can be created as an experience, isn't mechanically what's happening. Everything exists now. So what you choose for a particular experience in the moment, in the present, and make your connections according to what is relevant for your theme of exploration. So those connections are plugged in, unplugged. It isn't really reincarnation. But from every perspective, you choose what is relevant to connect to for that perspective.
So from an idea of all things being now, you may have different soul families in every different now, or you have a big soul family, and then different experiences are selected for different members of that soul family.
You can have many different levels of that idea, and you will pick the one, you will connect to the one that is relevant for what you're experiencing as this you. Whereas in parallel realities, the soul families may be very different.
And in the parallel realities, even though those are other versions of me, they're still not me. Right?
You are you, they are they. Each is an individual, unique. Therefore, all things are happening at once, all views, all perspectives, all experiences, and you connect to what is relevant for the experience that you are having as the you know yourself to be in your particular reality.
And the me that I know myself to be in this reality, this is connected with the personality construct of the me
Yes.
that I'm experiencing. And all the other versions have different personality constructs.
Yes, of course, because different personality equals different person. And even though you may think you look alike, you're not the same person.
And even though we may have similarities, none of them are really essentially me. The only me is the one, or the only me that I relate to is the one that has this personality construct and is having this life theme experience.
Yes, but when you say relate to, you can connect to other versions of yourself, but you will do that from your unique perspective as they will do from their unique perspective.
Do people ever get jealous of their other versions that are having better experiences?
Knowing how things work on Earth, yes, that has happened.
Fascinating. What happens if you don't complete your life path? Like if you don't follow the soul path and that you set up for this lifetime, and you don't complete your walk down the hallway, so to speak, what happens? Does that automatically mean you'll reincarnate on Earth in a sense?
No. Again, reincarnation is an illusion. So you will make whatever decision you deem to be appropriate in whatever state you are, whether physical or non-physical, to either continue to learn the idea in a different way or to learn it some other way that is completely different. So the idea really is that you will use what it is you have experienced to your advantage, and you will make your decisions accordingly as to what to experience next.
And in that sense, it would just be a continuous experience then.
Yes, of course. You may change your form, but you go on, and the experience of being you in whatever form you're in continues. Because you exist. And time and space are illusions, so no matter what space-time framework or filter you impose upon your consciousness, you are still you in the now. And that's what makes it appear to continue when you interpret the now in a space-time framework, in a space-time way.
So you wouldn't experience necessarily regret about not finishing your life path.
Well, it's not impossible to experience the regret. I'm just simply saying you can use that to your advantage too. But it is not as likely when you go into the spirit realm that you will see it that way.
I see. Yeah, where do we, in a sense, go after we die out of 3D? Like the idea that the soul transitions from the three-dimensional paradigm, and what is the best way to explain in our language where the soul goes or can go?
It goes nowhere. In the classical sense, the mechanical sense, it goes nowhere. You can have an experience of feeling like you're somewhere else, experiencing like you're somewhere else, but that's an arbitrary, illusionary experience. To put it in simple terms, where does a television program go when you change the channel? The vibrations may still be there, the frequency may still be there, the program may still be playing, but you're on a different channel, so you see a different thing. It doesn't go anywhere because there's nowhere to go in its most fundamental response to that question. Everything is here and now. So everyone that has ever lived and ever died, everyone, everywhere, is right here, right now, but it is the frequencies that create a sense of separation so that they become invisible to you. But they're all right here.
So, and the soul itself, that's beyond the higher self. The next level up is the soul, or the soul is connected to the individual personality. How does that work?
The soul is connected to the individual personality and creates the higher mind, non-physically, and the physical mind to have the physical experience.
Okay. So you can never be separated from your soul in a sense. It doesn't
No.
go anywhere different than you. It's always with you in whatever form you're in.
You are always it. It's not with you. You are it. You are the soul.
So when we wake up after we die, so to speak, does our life that we've had fade away like a dream?
No, not at first. You will usually, although there are some exceptions, but you will usually go through what is called life review, which is simply an assessment of what it is you learned, what it is you experienced, and how you can use it to make a decision as to what to do next. Now, you can allow it to fade eventually if certain aspects of it no longer serve you, but it will always be with you and always be accessible if you so desire. It becomes a part of the greater you as an experience. That's what the spirit is. It's the experience that you retain. And so it becomes a part of you, and it's always there to access. Much in the same way that you may have learned something when you were a child, and you may not think about it all the time. It may fade away, but suddenly you may need to remember that particular experience and call upon something you learned from that experience for what you're going through in the present, in your present form. So it's always there. You may not always pay attention. That's your version of it fading away. But when you need to pay attention, the information is accessible. It's always there. It's always a part of you.
So how do our ego and our personality feel about this shift that happens where you're no longer, quote unquote, existing on earth and you're simply a consciousness in spirit?
The question is relatively vague. What do you mean, how do you feel about it? You will feel whatever it is you choose to feel at that point. You will experience whatever it is you choose to experience at that point.
Well, for example, like most people before they die, or if they're in the process of dying, may struggle to stay alive in a sense.
Yes, but you are asking the question from the point of view of being already dead.
Right. So what happens to the ego and the personality when you're dead?
It becomes a part of you, but you're bigger than that. Again, similar to the idea I just explained. What happens to the part of you that is the child learning a lesson in childhood? What happens to it? It's still a part of you. You're just more than that now.
Is incarnation different for interdimensional beings than for human beings?
Human beings are interdimensional beings. Now, the experience of what type of incarnation, yes, of course, that's different because it can be many different ways in which you can experience the concept of incarnation. But again, you're all interdimensional beings. So, what's the experience like?
I guess I was thinking more like Sasquatch or yourself. That's much more interdimensional than we experience.
Well, like I said, there are different ways to experience the concept of incarnation. So, the mechanism is the same for everyone. It's just a matter of a shift in frequency, a shift in perspective. And that makes the experience different depending upon how you're expressing the incarnation. What you are as an incarnated being changes the experience. But the mechanism is no different.
I see. You've also talked about the idea of life review after death.
Yes.
And are we shown like every detail and moment of our life, and then are we only shown the unresolved or the
Everything.
unrealized things?
Everything. Every single split second is there. And it's not that you are shown it, it's that you are aware of it. Because there's no more barriers. There's not space and time in the same way as an experience. Therefore, all the veils drop and you experience it. Everything that you have created, everything that you have experienced is there. And so you review it, you look at it, you absorb it, you learn from it, you move on. But remember, it doesn't take place in the same amount of time. So the life review can be experienced from your perspective in a split second.
So is that sort of like the idea of people saying, just before they died, they saw their life flash before them?
Yes, it's similar because they're very close to that moment. Now, as we said, once upon a time, the idea that everything is here and now is really what's happening. You choose a specific here and now, which has to do with that particular life and the relevance for that life experience. But the thing of it is, every single moment, in a sense, I'm just going to use this euphemism, is layered on top of every other moment. So it's you're experiencing everything at once because it's all right there. So you're seeing in more dimensions of what's right here and now when you go through life review, because it's not separated so much by time. So everything that's here and now, like a double, triple, quadruple, quintuple exposure, is all there, and that's why you get it all. Every single thing is recorded, so to speak, in the same place. That's why you experience every single second. You're seeing it more as a depth rather than stretched out linearly.
So that sort of explains the idea of if someone has committed atrocities, so to speak,
Yes.
on Earth,
Yes.
that when they experience life review, the shock of the depth of darkness will impact the being or the soul of...
It can, because you're experiencing things not only from your point of view, but from every point of view you have ever interacted with. Because again, that barrier drops. So there is less difference between you and anyone else.
Like, for example, you had talked about with Hitler that he literally had to be put on ice in a sense to deal with the intensity of the negativity of what had been promulgated as a result of his actions.
Yes.
Okay. So is the idea that if you live a good life and you bring a lot of happiness and joy and love into the world, that when you experience your life review, you will experience that more fully and also be able to balance that with the negative experiences that may have been generated by your behavior?
You know the law. What you put out is what you get back.
And then there's a type of processing that the consciousness goes through to absorb all of this information from a new perspective.
A type, yes. Not exactly the same kind of processing you may experience in linear space-time, but yes, a type of processing.
Okay. And like for animals, I know that question that comes up periodically about, do animals have souls and do they...
Animals are souls. Remember, you have to, in a sense, stop thinking that a soul is something you have. A soul is something you are.
So is there like the animal oversoul, or...
Absolutely.
There's the animal oversouls, okay. And
there are cat oversouls, dog oversouls, any other animal oversoul, and there is the general collective animal oversoul.
And the reason that an animal may instinctively have certain kinds of behavior that give it a lot of pleasure is because, in a sense, they're channeling the animal oversoul of their species. Is that...
Well, that can be one way that they experience a certain kind of pleasure. Yes, it's not the only way.
Right. But do they actually go through a type of life review when they pass away?
Sort of. It's not experienced exactly in the same way, but it's similar enough that I suppose you could use it as an example.
So they would, let's say a dog would...
All the experiences that animal had in life, in a sense, are reviewed, but it doesn't come with the same kind of perspective. It's not used exactly in the same way.
And they independently incarnate, or they are also it's necessary for another consciousness such as a human to collaborate in their incarnation?
Well, it depends on what's chosen. It can be either. It depends on the theme that is chosen.
Wow, so they're not really that much different from us. They just, in a sense, speak a different language, find pleasure in other behaviors that are not quote unquote human behaviors,
Yes.
and they're equal to us in a certain way.
Yes. Again, the mechanisms are the same for everything.
Thing. Okay, and insects.
It's an animal. It's not a vegetable. It's not a mineral. It's an animal.
So I was just thinking of like bees, they have that hive mentality.
Well, so to speak. In actual fact, it's not really accurate to say it's a hive mentality. It's actually more of a hive empathy.
So they feel what the other bees are feeling.
Yes, that's more accurate.
Well, and is some ET civilizations actually express that idea also?
Yes, of course.
Because that's just another phenomenon of existence.
Yes.
A collective.
Yes.
With beings similar to oneself or of the same species.
Yes.
Okay, and so like a life review for a bee.
This may be difficult to explain, and so we would ask you to move on.
All right. Filled with milk and honey? No.
Not milk.
Okay. Does everyone have to go through a life review?
You don't have to, but in the afterlife, there's almost no reason not to. There can be some exceptions, but they are true exceptions for a variety of reasons we will not go into now. It's almost an automatic function, just because that's the point. Why have the life if you're not going to learn from the life?
Oh, it's so fascinating because we're doing so much connecting with animals and nature. It's just so fascinating to think of what a life review would be like from a completely different perspective, being a completely different creature.
We may touch on that at some other point.
Yes, I won't ask any more questions about it, but it is fascinating.
Yes.
Gives you more respect, I guess, in a sense, for their existence and what they are also doing.
It can.
How will the splitting prism of parallel realities appear from our perspective as the different pathways diverge? Will people who aren't aligned with us just start to sort of fade away and be further and further in the distance, or will they leave our perception altogether?
The question has answered itself. Yes. It will generally fade away in some way, shape, or form, and eventually you will no longer experience others that are no longer vibrationally compatible.
I see. And then the idea about a next incarnation, can you touch on that at all, about how those choices are made? Each individual personality, in a sense, that has its own choices about that. Is that how it works?
Again, from a linear perspective, the question makes sense when you say next, but everything already exists structurally. So it's more a matter of, if we can use this kind of an illustration for you. Imagine that your consciousness is above it all. Think of yourself for the moment as the oversoul. You have all of these extensions already. But let's just say for the moment, you decide to give a little bit of special attention to one over the others. And then in the next moment, you decide to give a little bit of special attention to a different extension that already exists. It's more like that, although that's not even an accurate description, because that's still coming from a linear perspective to some degree. But it's more about the idea of shifts in focus and patterns within the consciousness of a higher being, a higher level of yourself, that then creates the experience of a focus in a manner through the filter of space-time that appears to be the next focus. But next is only experienced from the level of the physical reality. It's not experienced from the level of the oversoul.
From that level, it's a refocusing. From this level, it's a linear experience.
That's closer to the truth, although again, that's not completely accurate because we're using physical space-time terminology to describe this.
So how did reincarnations originally get this idea that, oh, you're going to pay back your karma of what you did in this lifetime, etc.? How far off is that from what actually happened?
Well, the idea is that you do have the ability to recognize when you may be out of alignment with yourself, out of balance. It's just that from a linear perspective, once you've bought into the idea that things have to happen one after the other, then obviously the concept of recognizing an imbalance and rebalancing yourself will automatically also fit that modality. You'll see it as something that happened in the past that needs to be balanced in the present, or perhaps if not, then balanced in the future. So the idea is that it's simply part of the overall experience of linear space-time to fragment and disconnect things and put them in a sequential way, and including the idea of being out of alignment and rebalancing yourself.
So I suppose if you have a strong enough conviction that you need to refocus your attention on a life that makes up for something that you did in a previous life.
But you didn't do it. You didn't do it. What I'm saying is you have the linear perspective that it was you. But the idea is you are connecting to an experience of a coexisting, simultaneously existing being to aid and assist you in the theme you're exploring in this life. But the idea is that it simply got strung out in this linear idea of reincarnation and karmic balance over lifetimes because you experience the idea of linear time and one thing happening after another. And if something doesn't get balanced in one lifetime, then you made the extrapolation that it must happen in another one of your lifetimes. But that's not the mechanical reality. It's only the way you have created the illusionary experience.
So it's actually more immediate, because I know a lot of people become concerned about justice.
Yes.
You know, oh, all the injustices that are experienced on Earth, and somewhere, someplace, somebody pays for that, or it gets balanced, or they have to correct. But the mechanism is actually just in the immediacy. What you put out is what you get back. Any repercussions from anything you do happen in the same quote unquote lifetime. And
Well, so to speak. The idea doesn't mean that you have to see it happening in the lifetime, because as I said, there's life review. But you have to understand that the idea of physical and non-physical reality, in a sense, is the continuation of your life. Therefore, just because it happens, just because you may recognize the idea of how to align when you're non-physical, doesn't mean the alignment hasn't happened just because it didn't happen in the physical part of the life.
I see. So it's actually a continuation. You will balance that within yourself
Yes.
at some point in your existence.
Yes. Because remember, all that is already is. And therefore, it in and of itself is the idea of balance. You can't,
You
in a
really
sense,
can't
be
get away with
outside of it. You can't be outside of it. It'll all be in balance at some point, because all that is the very concept of everything is in balance.
Yeah. It's just sort of like the human version isn't
Yes.
the way it happens. It
Yes.
really is more just a holistic thing where any aspect of the self that's out of balance will seek to move towards balance.
Exactly.
And that is what the karma is.
Yes. Moving toward balance. Yes. Aligning with that idea of moving toward balance.
Very interesting. So it's actually a lot kinder than perhaps we might imagine here on Earth, where things can get really dark. And
Justice is not punishment. Justice is realization.
that's good. And that's intelligent.
Yes.
So just looking a little at the human history and everything, when did the Anunnaki actually create the humans?
Homo sapien was generally genetically engineered somewhere around 350,000 years ago was the beginning of one of the programs, the major program. There were some minor experiments before that and some after, but the general idea of the beginning of that genetic program in earnest was about 350,000 years ago.
And so one question that came up was, how did souls know a new vehicle for incarnation had been created? Because that's what that was, a new vehicle.
Well, so to speak, yes. But remember, in the soul's perspective, everything exists here and now. Therefore, how did they know? All they had to do was be of the vibration that required the experience of a vehicle. And they would be drawn to a number of selections and choose what would be relevant for the theme they were going to explore.
So that's kind of where the whole hybridization, evolution of human consciousness fits in.
In a sense. But please do remember, when we use the term in your language, vehicle, we're not necessarily referring to the physical body, because a soul doesn't enter a physical body. The physical body is a projection of the soul. It's in the soul. The soul is not in the body's in the soul. You are a soul. So the idea of a vehicle is not meant as an empty physical shell. It's simply meant as a way of experiencing yourself.
And then with the hybridization program, consciousness that is interested in evolving through that process will be attracted to that vibration, become aware of the existence of that methodology in a sense, and participate.
Yes. You always are attracted to whatever you are the frequency of. It's made known to you automatically.
Who were the first physical ET beings to achieve space travel, or is that even a question?
We do not know that.
Like, are you all aware of how far into space exploration has occurred? Like, because this is our neighborhood, right? You're part of our neighborhood.
Well, no, I'm not. I can visit your neighborhood by shifting my frequency, but I live in a parallel reality. That's my neighborhood. If you want to make the separation between parallel realities a real separation vibrationally, then you have to understand that we do come from a different neighborhood. If you want to include many different levels of parallel realities, then yes, that can be a bigger neighborhood.
Okay. And then the idea of exploration into deep space, so to speak, because we're seeing this from a certain vantage point in the Milky Way and everything.
All right. Well, if you're talking about your neighborhood in terms of your physical universe experience, you're asking the question, how much of that universe has been explored?
By beings capable of exploring it.
We don't know. The universe is a big place. We're not aware of every being that may exist within even your physical universe.
Right. And so for your civilization, how far into space, in a sense? Have you gone to the furthest reaches of the universe or anything like that?
No. We have explored, I suppose perhaps if you want to put it in a percentage point, about 15% of the galaxy.
Of the galaxy? That's just the galaxy. Wow.
Yes. And there are other galaxies we have visited from time to time, but then the exploration of those galaxies is different depending on the galaxy, but probably doesn't range more than about 0.5 to 1% of the exploration of those other galaxies, because we still have so much we don't know about the galaxy that we're exploring.
Right. And so, like the Andromeda galaxy,
Yes.
that one is in our attention. We're aware of it, and
Yes.
there are beings from that galaxy that are connecting to us.
Yes. And they don't represent more than about 1% of that galaxy.
Wow. Boy, the universe is a busy place.
And a big one. If you're going to buy into the illusion of distance.
Distance, right? So for you, like if you have a system that you want to explore, do you just say, oh, I'd like to go over there where that star is? Or is it a little more?
Well, we have a little bit more information because, again, we can see into multiple dimensions, and it gives us a general pathway to take for our intention of creating first contact with different civilizations. Now, there are many beings within our civilization and other civilizations that are, for lack of a better term, pure explorers. And therefore, they will just simply go where they feel like going and see what they find.
Sounds very Star Trek-y.
In a sense, remember that many creators do pick up on the realities that they may not be aware of and interpret them in their stories.
I know, it's really fascinating. You said there was an earlier version of Sasani beings that interacted with ancient humans on Earth.
Yes, but there wasn't much interaction.
Yeah, because the question was, why didn't the humans go into psychic shock from those interactions?
Because only the few humans that were capable of allowing themselves to experience a certain frequency were capable of interacting to any degree with the early Sasani beings that visited your world. And that interaction was relatively limited. Mostly it was just simply the awareness of the existence of those beings from a distance and what they were doing from a distance. There were a few individuals that had a stronger interaction, but they were rare.
So even when the Earth was in earlier stages, even if people had not achieved vibrational levels where they could fully comprehend what was going on,
Yes.
there were always a few that had a very high vibrational state that then could access other realities and other beings.
Yes, but also please do remember there's another mechanism involved in this as well. And that is, for a limited amount of time, beings from our society that may visit your world can create a buffer zone around themselves vibrationally where they're not necessarily expressing all of their energy. In much the same way that we limit the amount of information we can share with all of you if certain bits of information are simply not appropriate to share at this time. That can be done vibrationally as well to a certain degree.
So like from the collective experience of all these different civilizations, are very many civilizations aware of your existence?
The civilizations that are aware of our existence are those that exist within the Interstellar Alliance and a few others beyond that.
And how many civilizations are part of the Interstellar Alliance?
554.
So, okay, so it's sort of like it's in this general neighborhood, the Interstellar Alliance, since we will eventually become part of that. And there,
if you wish, yes.
yeah, and a large number of those, like over 500 civilizations, are aware of the Sasani. Do they see you as certain kind of specialists, as just simply first contact specialists, or is it that your way of being able to see the mechanisms of how things work behind the scenes, so to speak, like in the diagram that you made, does that set you apart as a civilization?
The only way we can really answer that is to say that there are different civilizations that see us in different ways.